you awake, dim enough to remind you that you shouldn't be. Daniel Hayes sat alone at his cubicle, the blue glow of his monitor washing over a face that looked older than 32, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. The data analysis report blinked at him, cursor mocking. Revenue projections, quarterly forecasts, numbers that meant everything to people who already had everything, and nothing to people like him who were just trying to hold on. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who watched Jamie after school. He's asleep. Don't worry about rushing back. Happy birthday, Daniel. Birthday. Right. He'd almost forgotten. Not that it mattered. Birthdays were for people who had the luxury of celebration, who could afford to mark the passage of time with something other than exhaustion. Daniel rubbed his eyes and reached for the cold coffee beside his keyboard. His reflection caught in the dark window, rumpled shirt, tie loosened hours ago, hair that needed cutting. Behind him, the empty office stretched out in shadows and blue light. Everyone else had gone home. Everyone except him, apparently. And her. He noticed the light first. The corner office, still glowing. Elena Voss never left before midnight. Daniel had been here 3 years, and he could count on one hand the number of times he'd seen her office dark before then. She was a fixture in the building mythology. The CEO who took over at 28 when her father stepped down. The woman who wore silence like armor and control like a second skin. Beautiful in that untouchable way that made men nervous and competitors careful. She didn't do small talk, didn't do friendly, didn't do anything that wasn't calculated to within an inch of its life. Daniel had spoken to her exactly 4 times in 3 years. Twice in elevators, once at a company meeting, once when she'd walked past his cubicle and he'd said good morning and she'd given him a look that suggested she was trying to remember if he actually worked there. Not exactly the foundation of a meaningful relationship. He turned back to his screen, trying to focus. The numbers swam. He needed to finish this before he could go home. Needed to... You're still here. Daniel nearly jumped out of his skin. He spun in his chair to find Elena Voss standing 3 feet away, holding a small white box. She looked exactly like she always did. Tailored suit, this one charcoal gray, her dark hair pulled back in a way that was both severe and elegant. But there was something different in her expression, something almost uncertain. Yes, just finishing up some projections for the Morrison account. Daniel stood, then wondered if he should have, then felt stupid for wondering. I didn't realize anyone else was still here. I'm always here. Elena glanced at the box in her hands, then back at him. I was going to leave this on your desk, but since you're here... She held it out. Daniel took it automatically, confused. It's your birthday, she said, like that explained anything. Daniel opened the box. Inside was a single cupcake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, a little candle stuck in the top. The kind of thing you'd buy at a grocery store bakery counter. Simple, almost awkwardly so. He stared at it, genuinely speechless. I know it's not much. Elena shifted her weight, the first truly uncertain movement he'd ever seen from her. I saw it on the schedule, the birthday list. I thought everyone should have something on their birthday. You bought me a cupcake. Daniel didn't mean to sound so dumb, but his brain had apparently short-circuited. Is that weird? I think I made it weird. She pressed her lips together. Sorry, I should go. No, wait. Daniel set the box down carefully on his desk. It's not weird. It's actually really nice. I didn't expect it. You didn't expect your CEO to know you exist? There was the faintest hint of amusement in her voice. I mean, there are 400 employees. I'm pretty low on the totem pole. 378 employees, Matsit. Elena folded her arms. And you're a senior data analyst. That's not low. You generated the model that saved us $2 million in redundant vendor contracts last year. Daniel blinked. You know about that? I read every report that crosses my desk, including yours. She nodded at the cupcake. Are you going to light it? He fumbled for his lighter, smoker's guilt, a habit he was trying to quit, and lit the small candle. The flame wavered in the air conditioning. Make a wish, Elena said softly. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. In the dim office light, she looked younger, tired. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, a tightness around her mouth that spoke of pressure he couldn't imagine. He blew out the candle. What did you wish for? Elena asked. If I tell you, it won't come true. That's a myth. Wishes don't work that way. How do they work? You make them happen yourself, or you don't. She moved to lean against the edge of his cubicle wall, another gesture so unlike her usual rigid composure that it felt surreal. What are you doing here so late? Really? Daniel shrugged. Work, same as you. I'm here because if I go home, there's nothing there but an empty apartment and silence. What's your reason? The honesty caught him off guard. Daniel found himself answering before he could think better of it. I've got a 6-year-old who thinks I'm a superhero because I can make mac and cheese without burning it. I'm here late because the work needs to get done, and if I don't do it, someone else will. And that someone else might be the one who gets to keep their job when the next round of cuts comes. There are no cuts planned. There are always cuts planned. Companies like this don't stay profitable by being sentimental. Elena's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across her features. You're a cynic. I'm a realist. There's a difference. Is there? She picked up a small framed photo on his desk. Jamie, gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing of what might have been a dinosaur, or possibly a dog. Your son? Jamie. He's the reason I show up every day. Where's his mother? Daniel's jaw tightened. Not in the picture. Hasn't been for 4 years. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. He took the photo back, set it down carefully. What about you? No Mr. Voss waiting at home? No. Elena's voice went flat. Never has been. By choice. By necessity. She straightened, and for a moment Daniel thought she was about to leave, retreat back into the professional distance that usually defined her. But instead, she stayed. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you like working here? The question was so unexpected that Daniel actually laughed. Does anyone like working? I mean, it's fine. It pays the bills, keeps a roof over our heads. Why? Elena didn't answer right away. She walked to the window, looked out over the city lights spreading below them like stars brought down to earth. I built this company into what it is. My father handed me the reins and I turned it into something that actually matters. But every day, I walk into that office and I can feel them watching me, waiting for me to fail, waiting for me to prove that I don't deserve to be here. Who's them? The board, the shareholders, my father mostly. She turned back to face him. They think I'm temporary, a placeholder until someone more suitable comes along. That's insane. The company's grown 30% since you took over. Numbers don't matter when you're a woman in a room full of men who've already decided you don't belong. Elena's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. They're looking for any excuse, any weakness they can exploit. Daniel frowned. Why are you telling me this? I don't know. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Maybe because you're the first person in this building who's talked to me like I'm an actual human being in months. Maybe because it's late and I'm tired and I'm so sick of pretending I have everything under control. You don't have to pretend with me. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. You're a single father working his ass off to give his kid a good life. That's something. Elena moved back toward his desk, her expression unreadable. How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything feels impossible? Daniel thought about it. I don't think about how impossible it is. I just think about the next thing. Feed Jamie. Get him to school. Finish this report. Make it through today. And then I do it again tomorrow. The next thing, Elena repeated. That's simple? Nothing's simple, but breaking it down helps. He gestured at the cupcake. Like this. You wanted to do something nice for someone. So you did. That's the next thing. She smiled then, a real smile, and it transformed her face completely. You know what? I like you, Daniel Hayes. I like you too, boss. Don't call me boss, not tonight. Tonight I'm just Elena. Okay, just Elena. They stood there in the quiet office, the moment stretching between them like something fragile and new. Daniel felt suddenly, inexplicably bold. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the unexpected kindness of the cupcake. Maybe it was the way she was looking at him, like he'd said something profound when all he'd done was state the obvious. You know what would really solve your problems? He said, grinning. What? You could marry me. The words were out before he could stop them. Stupid. Completely, catastrophically stupid. A joke that fell flat in the empty air between them. Elena stared at him. What did you say? I was joking. Sorry. That was inappropriate. I should say it again. Daniel's brain stuttered. It was just a dumb joke. Say it again. Elena's eyes were locked on his, intense and searching. I said, you could marry me? The words came out like a question now. Elena didn't speak for a long moment. Her expression went through about 6 different emotions before settling on something Daniel couldn't read at all. Come with me, she said finally. What? To my apartment, right now. We need to talk. I don't think... Please. The word seemed to cost her something. I promise I'm not insane, or dangerous, or whatever you're thinking, but I need to tell you something, and I can't do it here. Every rational part of Daniel's brain was screaming at him to say no, to make an excuse, to go home to Jamie and forget this entire surreal interaction had ever happened. But there was something in Elena's expression, something desperate and honest and real. Okay, he heard himself say. Let's talk. Don't. Elena's apartment was nothing like Daniel expected. He'd imagined something sterile and modern, all glass and steel and minimalist furniture. What he walked into instead was warm and lived in, full of books and soft lighting and the kind of comfortable chaos that spoke of an actual person living an actual life. Sit, Elena said, gesturing to a worn leather couch. Do you want coffee? Water? Something stronger? I'm good. Daniel sat, feeling completely out of place. Elena, what's going on? She paced in front of him, her professional composure cracking with every step. Finally, she stopped and turned to face him. There's a clause in my father's succession agreement, she said. A clause I didn't know about until 6 months ago. It states that if I'm unmarried by the time I turn 31, the board has the legal right to call a vote of no confidence and remove me as CEO. Daniel's stomach dropped. That can't be legal. It's buried in corporate bylaws from the 1950s that were never updated. My father's lawyers dug it up. Elena's voice was bitter. It was meant for him, a way to ensure stability. The idea was that a married man with a family would be more committed, more stable, less likely to take risks that could damage the company. That's insane. It's discrimination. It's technically legal because it applies to any CEO, regardless of gender. Never mind that every CEO before me was already married when they took the position. She laughed harshly. My father waited. He watched me build this company into something better than it ever was under him, and then he dropped this bomb. 6 months. Find a husband or lose everything I've worked for. Why didn't you say something? Fight it publicly? Because the moment I do, I look weak, desperate. It becomes the story. CEO, can't handle pressure. Woman unfit for leadership. Elena shook her head. The media would tear me apart. The board would use it as evidence that I'm not stable enough to lead. I'd lose either way. Daniel's mind was racing. Okay, but there has to be someone. He gestured vaguely. You? Successful, intelligent, beautiful. You could have your pick. Of who? Men who see me as a trophy? Business rivals who'd use the marriage to undermine me? My father's cronies who'd report every private conversation back to him? Elena's voice cracked. I can't trust anyone in my world, Daniel. They all want something. They all have an agenda. And I don't? You made a joke about marrying me, a stupid, honest, completely ridiculous joke. She sat down beside him, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. You weren't angling for anything. You weren't trying to impress me. You were just being human. And I haven't had that in so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Daniel leaned back, trying to process. You can't be serious. You can't actually be considering... I have 3 weeks, Elena interrupted. 3 weeks until I turn 31 and the clock runs out. I've looked at every option, every angle, and they all end the same way, with me losing control of my company to a board full of men who've been waiting for this moment since the day I walked into that office. Elena, I know what I'm asking. I know how insane this sounds. She turned to face him fully. But you're the first person I've met in years who doesn't want something from me. You're grounded, honest. You have a child, which makes the marriage look stable and legitimate. And you work for the company, which means you already have access and security clearance. You understand the business. I have a 6-year-old son. I know. I'm broke. I've got student loans, medical debt from when Jamie broke his arm last year. My car makes a sound I can't afford to get fixed. None of that matters to me. Daniel stood, needing distance. This was crazy. Completely, utterly insane. What are you offering here? A real marriage? A fake one? What? I don't know. Elena's honesty was almost painful. I don't know what this would look like, but it would be legal, binding, real enough to satisfy the clause and keep the board from challenging me. And what do I get out of this? Besides being married to my boss, which seems like an HR nightmare waiting to happen. Financial security. Your son's future. College paid for. Medical coverage that actually works. A home that doesn't require you to worry about making rent. Elena stood too, meeting his eyes. And maybe, just maybe, someone in your corner who actually appreciates what you bring to the table. Someone who sees you. The offer hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Daniel thought about Jamie, about the eviction notice he'd gotten last month that he'd managed to fight off by the skin of his teeth, about the lunch account at school that was always running negative, about the fear that lived in his chest every single day that he wasn't doing enough, being enough, providing enough. And he thought about this woman in front of him, powerful and brilliant and completely trapped by systems designed to break her. If I say yes, he said slowly, and that's a huge if, what happens to us? To Jamie? To our lives? We figure it out, together. Elena's voice was steady now. I won't lie to you, it'll be complicated. The media will have questions. The board will scrutinize everything, but I'll protect you, both of you. That's a promise. Why should I believe you? Because I don't make promises I can't keep. She held out her hand. I know it's asking a lot. I know you have every reason to say no. But I'm asking anyway. Will you marry me, Daniel Hayes? Daniel looked at her hand, thought about every consequence, every risk, every way this could explode in his face. And then he thought about Jamie's face when he'd had to tell him they couldn't afford the school field trip. About working himself to exhaustion and still barely making ends meet. About the constant grinding weight of trying to do everything alone. He took her hand. I'm probably going to regret this, he said. Probably, Elena agreed. When? Tomorrow. I have a contact who can expedite the license. We can be married by tomorrow evening. Jesus. Too fast? Daniel laughed, slightly hysterical. We've known each other for about 3 hours of actual conversation, and you're asking me to marry you in less than 24 hours. I don't think fast even covers it. We can wait if you need time. No. Daniel squeezed her hand before letting go. No, if we're doing this, we do it now, before I come to my senses. Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd known her, it reached her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might be a terrible husband. I might be a terrible wife. We'll figure it out. Together, Elena echoed. Daniel checked his phone. 2 a.m. In less than 24 hours, he'd be married to Elena Voss. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, all he felt was a strange sense of rightness. Like the next thing had finally appeared, and all he had to do was take the step. I should go, he said. Jamie will be wondering where I am. Of course. Elena walked him to the door. Daniel? Yeah? I meant what I said, about protecting you, about seeing you. I know this started as a business arrangement, but you're not just a signature on a contract to me. You're a person, and I won't forget that. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. He made it halfway down the hall before he let himself process what he'd just agreed to. Marriage. To his CEO. To save her company, and, if he was honest, to save himself and Jamie from the constant struggle that had become their lives. It was insane. It was reckless. It was the next thing. And Daniel Hayes had never been good at stopping once he'd started. The next 18 hours moved with the surreal quality of a dream. Daniel went home, relieved Mrs. Chen, and spent the morning with Jamie like it was any other day. Pancakes for breakfast, cartoons on the couch. The kind of normal that felt precious because he knew it was about to change forever. He didn't tell Jamie, not yet. How could he explain something he barely understood himself? Elena texted him details. A courthouse. 2 o'clock. Bring Jamie if he wanted, or she could arrange for someone to watch him. clinical, professional, like they were scheduling a meeting instead of a wedding. Daniel brought Jamie. "Where are we going, Dad?" Jamie asked from the back seat, kicking his feet against the seat. "To meet someone important." "Like the president?" "Sort of. Her name is Elena. She's my boss." "Your boss is important?" "Very important." Jamie processed this. "Are you in trouble?" "No, buddy, not in trouble. The opposite, actually." The courthouse was as bland and bureaucratic as Daniel expected. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. Elena was already there, waiting in a small side room. She'd changed from her usual power suits into something softer, a cream-colored dress that made her look younger, almost vulnerable. She looked terrified. "Hi," Daniel said. "Hi." Elena's eyes went to Jamie, who was hiding half behind Daniel's leg. "You must be Jamie." Jamie nodded, mute. Elena crouched down to his level. "I've heard a lot about you. Your dad says you're really good at drawing." That got a response. "I drew a dragon yesterday." "A dragon? That sounds amazing. What color was it?" "Red, with blue fire." Blue fire is definitely the coolest kind. Elena glanced up at Daniel, something soft in her expression. "Your dad is pretty cool too. He makes the best mac and cheese." "I've heard that. Maybe you can teach me sometime." Jamie considered this seriously. "Okay, but you have to stir it the right way or it gets lumpy." "I'll remember that." The courthouse official called them in. The ceremony was brief, almost aggressively unromantic. Vows that were legally required but emotionally empty. Rings that Elena had somehow procured. Simple bands, nothing flashy. Jamie stood between them, holding both their hands, not really understanding what was happening, but happy to be included. "I now pronounce you married. You may kiss." Daniel and Elena looked at each other. They hadn't discussed this part. Elena leaned in and pressed her lips to his, brief, chaste, but enough to seal the deal. And just like that, Daniel Hayes was married to Elena Voss. Jamie clapped, delighted. The official looked bored. Elena's hand was shaking in his. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," Daniel said. "We did." They walked out into the afternoon sunlight, officially bound together by law and desperation and maybe something else neither of them wanted to name yet. Elena had arranged for a car, a driver. Daniel had expected that. What he hadn't expected was for her to invite them both to dinner. "I thought maybe we should celebrate," she said, sounding uncertain again. "Unless you have other plans." "We don't have plans," Daniel said. "Dinner sounds good." They ended up at a small Italian place, nothing fancy. Elena had chosen it specifically because it was quiet, because she knew Jamie would like the pasta, because she'd thought about what a 6-year-old would need. It was thoughtful in a way that caught Daniel off guard. Jamie talked nonstop through dinner, the initial shyness wearing off as he realized Elena was genuinely interested in his dragon drawings and his opinions on whether chocolate or vanilla ice cream was superior. Elena listened like he was giving a presentation to the board, asking follow-up questions, taking him seriously in a way that made Daniel's chest tight. When Jamie excused himself to go to the bathroom with the waitress, Elena turned to Daniel. "He's wonderful," she said quietly. "He's everything," Daniel replied. "I meant what I said earlier, about protecting him, about protecting both of you." Elena's fingers played with her new ring. "I know this is going to get complicated. The media, the board, all of it. But I won't let any of that touch him. That's a promise. You keep making promises. I keep the ones I make." Daniel believed her. Against all logic, against every reason to be skeptical, he believed her. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now, we tell the board. Tomorrow. Emergency meeting." Elena's professional mask slipped back into place. "They're going to have questions. What do we tell them? The truth. That we're married. That it's legal and binding, that they have no grounds to challenge my position. They're going to know something's up. Let them suspect, as long as they can't prove anything, it doesn't matter." Elena met his eyes. "Are you ready for this?" "No, but I don't think ready is an option anymore. Welcome to my world." Jamie came back, chocolate ice cream on his shirt. Elena laughed, a real laugh, and helped him clean up with a napkin. The domesticity of it was jarring, beautiful, terrifying. Daniel watched his new wife interact with his son and wondered what the hell he'd gotten them all into, and wondered why, despite everything, it felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd made the right choice. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Daniel showed up at 8:30, wearing his best suit, which was to say his only suit that didn't have a coffee stain somewhere on it. Elena met him outside the conference room, looking every inch the CEO again, armor firmly in place. "Ready?" she asked. "Not even a little bit. Good. That makes two of us." She straightened his tie, a gesture so casually intimate it made his breath catch. "Just follow my lead, and whatever they ask, tell the truth. They'll respect that more than any story we could spin." The conference room was all dark wood and intimidating leather chairs. 12 board members, each one looking at Daniel like he was a particularly interesting bug they were about to dissect. At the head of the table sat a man who could only be Elena's father, same dark eyes, same sharp features, but cold in a way that made Daniel's skin crawl. "Gentlemen," Elena said, her voice calm and controlled. "Thank you for coming on short notice. I have an announcement to make." Silence. Waiting. "As of yesterday, I am legally married. This is my husband, Daniel Hayes." The room erupted. Questions fired from every direction. How long had they known each other? Why the secrecy? Why now? What was his background? His credentials? His intentions? Elena fielded them with practiced ease, never losing her composure. Daniel stayed quiet, letting her take the lead like she'd suggested. Until her father spoke. "This is convenient timing," Richard Voss said, his voice carrying the weight of accusation. 3 weeks before the succession clause expires. Almost like this marriage was engineered specifically to circumvent corporate policy. Every eye turned to Daniel. He could feel the trap closing, could see the board members calculating, adding up the pieces, coming to the obvious conclusion. "You're right," Daniel said. Elena's head whipped toward him. "Daniel, no, he's right. The timing is convenient." Daniel looked directly at Richard. "Elena told me about the clause, about the deadline. And yeah, that was part of why we got married so quickly, but it's not the only reason." "Then what is?" Richard leaned forward, predatory. "I'm a single father working my ass off to give my kid a decent life. Elena's a CEO working her ass off to prove she deserves to be here. We both know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people waiting for us to fail." Daniel felt Elena's hand find his under the table, a silent plea to stop talking. He ignored it. "So yeah, the clause was part of it. But I also married her because she's the first person in years who looked at me and saw someone worth knowing. And I think I might be one of the few people who looks at her and sees a person instead of a position." The room went silent. Richard's expression was unreadable. "That's quite a speech, Mr. Hayes." "It's the truth." "The truth, in my experience, is rarely so convenient." "Then maybe you've been living in the wrong world." Daniel stood. "Look, I know what you all think, that I'm some gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it, that Elena's desperate, that this whole thing is a sham." He pulled out his phone, brought up his bank statement, and tossed it on the table. "That's my financial situation. Negative balance, student loans, debt collectors. If I was after money, I'd have picked a better mark than someone whose father is actively trying to destroy her." Richard picked up the phone, scrolled through. His expression shifted, just barely. "I married Elena because she asked," Daniel continued, "because she needed help and I could give it, and because somewhere in all the corporate politics and power plays, I saw someone real, someone worth standing beside. So if you want to challenge her position, go ahead, but you'll have to go through me first." The silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, one of the board members, an older woman with steel gray hair, laughed. "Well," she said, "at least he's honest. That's more than I can say for most people in this building." A few others nodded. Not agreement, but consideration. It was something. Richard stood. "This isn't over. I want a full background check on Mr. Hayes. Financial records, employment history, everything." "That's fine," Elena said coolly. "You'll find he's exactly who he says he is, an employee in good standing with an exemplary work record." "We'll see." Richard moved toward the door, then paused. "You think you've won, Elena, but this is just the beginning." He left. The board members filed out after him, some looking thoughtful, others skeptical, all of them carrying the weight of judgment. When the door finally closed, Elena turned to Daniel. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed, she said. Probably both. Daniel sank into a chair. Did I just make everything worse? I don't know, maybe. Elena sat beside him. But it was honest, and that matters. Your father hates me. My father hates everyone. Don't take it personally. He's going to come after us. You know that, right? I've been waiting for him to come after me for years. At least now I have someone watching my back. Elena took his hand. Thank you for standing up, for not running when you had the chance. I'm still here, aren't I? You are. She squeezed his hand. God help us both. Daniel laughed, slightly hysterical. What happens now? Now we wait. See what they dig up. See what moves my father makes. Elena stood, pulling him up with her. And we figure out how to actually be married while we're at it. Any ideas on that front? Not a single one. Great. We're making this up as we go. Welcome to my life, Elena said again. And despite everything, despite the board, despite Richard Voss's threats, despite the impossibility of their situation, Daniel found himself smiling. They'd figure it out, together. One impossible next thing at a time. The background check arrived 48 hours later, delivered to the board in a sealed envelope that might as well have been a bomb for all the tension it created. Daniel didn't see the contents directly, but Elena did. She called him at work that afternoon, her voice tight. Conference room 3, now. He found her standing at the window. The report spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. Every mistake he'd ever made, laid bare in black and white. The credit card debt from when Sarah left and he'd had to cover 2 months of daycare alone. The eviction notice from 3 years ago. The unpaid medical bills that had gone to collections. Even the speeding ticket from last year when he'd rushed Jamie to urgent care for a fever that turned out to be nothing. They're thorough, I'll give them that, Daniel said, trying for levity and failing. Elena turned from the window. There's nothing here that disqualifies you. Nothing illegal, nothing scandalous. Just a man doing his best in impossible circumstances. Your father must be disappointed. Furious, actually. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. He was expecting a criminal record, secret families, gambling debts, something he could use. Sorry to disappoint. Don't be. Elena gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. This actually helps us. It proves you're exactly who you said you were. No hidden agenda, no ulterior motives. Just crushing poverty and poor financial planning. Just humanity, Elena corrected. She moved closer, and Daniel caught the faint scent of her perfume. Something subtle and expensive that didn't quite match the exhaustion in her eyes. The board met this morning. They voted to accept the marriage as legitimate. My position is secure. Relief hit him like a physical thing. That's good. That's really good. It's temporary. Elena's voice went flat. My father made that very clear. He's looking for cracks, inconsistencies, anything he can use to prove this marriage is fraudulent. So what do? We act married. She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. We move in together, you and Jamie, full cohabitation, the optics matter. Daniel's stomach dropped. Move in together, as in live in the same house, as in you can't keep going back to your apartment every night while I sleep alone in mine. People will notice. My father will use it. Elena crossed her arms, defensive. I have a house, 4 bedrooms, good school district. There's space for Jamie. For both of you. You bought a house. Last year, investment property mostly. I've barely been there. She looked almost embarrassed. I know it's a lot. I know this whole situation is insane, but we're in it now and we have to sell it. Daniel thought about his apartment, the leaky faucet he couldn't afford to fix, the thin walls that let in every sound from the neighbors, the persistent smell of mildew he'd stopped noticing. Then he thought about Jamie, about the opportunity to give him something better. When? He asked. This weekend. I'll send movers for your things. I don't have things. I have a couch from Goodwill and some kitchen stuff from Target. Then it won't take long to move. Elena's expression softened. I know this is moving fast. I know I keep asking you to upend your entire life, but it's the next thing, Daniel interrupted, right? We keep taking the next step. Right. She looked relieved. Thank you. Stop thanking me. We're married. Apparently this is what that means. The word hung between them. Married. It still didn't feel real. Daniel wore the ring, went home to Jamie, and nothing had changed except everything had changed. He was married to Elena Voss, his CEO, a woman he barely knew and was somehow legally bound to for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with survival. It should have felt like a mistake. Instead, it felt like the first thing that had made sense in years. The house was in a neighborhood Daniel had driven through but never imagined living in. Tree-lined streets, actual yards, houses that looked like they belonged in magazines instead of reality. Elena's place was a two-story colonial with white shutters and a front porch that screamed suburban normalcy. Jamie's eyes went wide when they pulled up. "We're going to live here?" "Looks like it," Daniel said, still processing. "It's huge." "Yeah, buddy, it is." Elena was waiting on the porch, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor of tailored suits. She looked younger, more approachable, almost nervous. "Hey," she said as they climbed the steps. "Hey." Daniel hefted the suitcase he'd packed, most of their worldly possessions condensed into 2 bags and a few boxes. "This is it. The Hayes family traveling circus." "I like circuses," Jamie announced. Elena crouched down to his level. "You want to see your room? I tried to set it up, but I might have gotten it wrong." "You can change anything you want." She'd done more than set it up. Jamie's room was straight out of a kid's dream. Dark blue walls painted with constellations, a bed shaped like a rocket ship, shelves already stocked with books and art supplies, a desk by the window with a view of the backyard. It was thoughtful and excessive and completely overwhelming. Jamie made a sound that was half gasp, half squeal, and launched himself at the rocket bed. "Is this okay?" Elena asked Daniel quietly. "I might have overdone it." "You definitely overdid it." Daniel's throat was tight. "He's going to lose his mind. In a good way. I wanted him to feel at home. I know this whole situation is weird for him. You're good with him. With kids in general, I'm guessing." "I have no idea what I'm doing with kids." Elena watched Jamie explore every corner of the room with the intensity of a treasure hunter. "But I remember what it was like to feel like I didn't belong anywhere. I didn't want him to feel that way here." Daniel looked at her, really looked. This woman who commanded boardrooms and built empires, admitting vulnerability like it wasn't a weakness. "Thank you for caring. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. He's part of this now, part of us." She caught herself. Part of the arrangement, the marriage, whatever we're calling this. "Right, the arrangement." They stood in awkward silence, watching Jamie test out the rocket bed's various compartments and hiding spots. The moment felt too domestic, too real, like they were actually parents instead of 2 people playing house for legal reasons. "I'll show you your room," Elena said finally. "It's down the hall, private bathroom, space for your stuff. I tried not to make assumptions about what you'd want." Daniel's room was simpler than Jamie's, but still nicer than anywhere he'd ever lived. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, a bed that looked like it cost more than 3 months of his old rent, windows that faced the backyard where early evening light filtered through trees he could actually name. "This is too much," he said. "It's a guest room, technically." "I'm not a guest. I'm your husband." Elena flinched at the word. "I didn't want to assume about sleeping arrangements. I have my room, you have yours. We can keep things separate, professional." "Professional marriage." "Right." Daniel set his bag down. "Where's your room?" "End of the hall." "So we're living together, but not really living together." "I don't know what we're doing," Elena admitted. "I've never been married before. Have you?" "No. Sarah and I never got that far. She left before we could make it legal." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Some people aren't built for staying." Daniel moved to the window. "I just want to make sure Jamie's okay with all this, that he doesn't get confused about what we are." "What are we?" The question should have been simple. Instead, it felt loaded with implications neither of them was ready to address. "Partners," Daniel said finally. "We're partners trying to figure this out." "Partners," Elena repeated. "I can work with that." They managed 3 days of relative peace before the media found out. Daniel was walking Jamie to his new school, a private academy that Elena had insisted on, with actual art programs and teachers who remembered students' names, when a photographer appeared out of nowhere. "Mr. Hayes, is it true you married Elena Voss? How long have you been together? What does your family think? Daniel pulled Jamie closer, shielding him. No comment. Is this your son? How does he feel about having Elena Voss as a stepmother? Leave us alone. More cameras appeared. Questions flew. Jamie pressed against Daniel's side, scared and confused. Daniel kept walking, kept his head down, got Jamie through the school doors before turning to face the gathering crowd. My son is off limits, he said, voice low and dangerous. You want to ask about me? Fine, but you leave him out of this. The public has a right to know. The public has a right to nothing when it comes to a 6-year-old kid. You print his picture, you mention his name, and I will make your life a legal nightmare. Are we clear? The photographer actually stepped back. Clear? Daniel waited until they dispersed before pulling out his phone with shaking hands. Elena answered on the first ring. It started, he said. I saw. I'm already on it. Legal team is sending cease and desist letters to every outlet. No photos of Jamie, no names, nothing. They were waiting outside his school, Elena. His school. I know, I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this. She sounded furious. I'm hiring security. For both of you. Someone to make sure this doesn't happen again. We don't need security. Yes, you do. This is my world now. Our world. And it's uglier than I wanted it to be. Elena's voice cracked. I promised to protect him. I meant it. Daniel leaned against the school wall, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. How do you live like this? With people watching every move? You learn to compartmentalize, to build walls. A pause. But you shouldn't have to, neither should Jamie. Too late for that. I know, Elena sounded defeated. I know, and I hate it. I hate that I brought this into your lives. We signed up for it. Knowingly or not, we're here now. Are you regretting it? Daniel thought about the question, about the photographers and the invasion and the sudden, terrifying exposure of their lives, about Jamie's scared face and the way his hands had shaken when Daniel dropped him off. Ask me later, he said, when I'm less pissed off. The security arrived that afternoon. A professional, unobtrusive woman named Marcus, who looked like she could bench press a car and had the kind of calm competence that made Daniel feel simultaneously safer and more aware of just how deep they were in this mess. I'll maintain a perimeter, Marcus explained, close enough to intervene if necessary, far enough that your son won't feel smothered. No one gets to him without going through me first. This is insane, Daniel muttered. This is necessary, Elena corrected. She'd come home early, still in her work clothes, her professional mask firmly in place. I won't take chances with Jamie's safety. He's going to ask questions. Then we tell him the truth. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. They told him that night over dinner, takeout Chinese that Elena had ordered because none of them felt like cooking. Jamie listened with the serious expression he got when processing big information. So people want to take pictures of us because you're famous? He asked Elena. Sort of. I run a big company, and sometimes people are interested in that. Are you like a movie star? More like a businesswoman. It's less exciting than movies. Jamie considered this. The lady with the camera scared me. I know, sweetheart. And I'm sorry. Elena's voice was gentle. That's why Marcus is going to be around, to make sure no one scares you again. Is Marcus nice? Very nice. She used to protect a president. Jamie's eyes widened. Really? Really? So you're in very good hands. Okay. Jamie went back to his lo mein, crisis apparently averted in the way only 6-year-old minds could manage. Daniel caught Elena's eye across the table. She looked exhausted, the day's weight visible in the slump of her shoulders. He wanted to say something, thank you maybe, or I'm sorry, or any of the 1,000 things that crowded his throat. Instead, he said, you want to help him with his homework after this? He's got a math worksheet that's kicking his butt. Elena blinked, surprised. I'm not very good with kids. You're doing fine, and he likes you. He barely knows me. So let him know you. Daniel pushed the container of Kung Pao chicken toward her. Stay. Be part of this. That's what partners do, right? Something shifted in Elena's expression, softened. Right. Partners. They did homework together at the kitchen table, Elena surprisingly patient as Jamie struggled through addition problems. She didn't talk down to him, Didn't get frustrated when he needed concepts explained 3 different ways. She just worked through it with him, steady and calm. Daniel watched from the sink where he was washing dishes and felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Something that looked a lot like affection. He shoved it down. This was an arrangement, a business deal. Getting feelings involved would only complicate things. But watching Elena help his son with math, her professional facade completely dropped. It was hard to remember why he needed to stay detached. The first board meeting after the media explosion was brutal. Daniel attended as Elena's guest. A power move she'd insisted on. Show them we're united. Show them this is real. Richard Voss was there naturally, looking like a predator who'd scented blood. "Well," he said as they entered, "if it isn't the happy couple, how's married life treating you?" "Fine, thank you," Elena replied coolly. "I saw the photos. Quite the media circus." Richard's smile was sharp. "Must be hard on the boy. What's his name again? Jamie?" Daniel's hand tightened on Elena's arm. A warning. Don't engage. "My stepson is doing well," Elena said evenly. "Thank you for your concern, stepson." How quickly we adopt new roles. Richard leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Mr. Hayes, how are you finding your new lifestyle? Quite the upgrade from that apartment in the East District." "I'm finding it fine." "And the job? Still working your way through data analysis? Or has your new position as the CEO's husband opened other doors?" The implication was clear. Gold digger, opportunist, social climber. "I'm still doing my job," Daniel said carefully. "Same work, same desk. Marriage doesn't change my professional responsibilities." "Doesn't it?" Richard turned to the rest of the board. "I think we need to discuss the optics of this situation. A CEO married to a subordinate employee. The potential for conflicts of interest. Questions of favoritism. Daniel's performance reviews are handled by his direct supervisor, not by me," Elena cut in. "There's no conflict. Perception is reality in business, Elena. You know that." Richard smiled. "I'm not suggesting anything improper, just that perhaps Mr. Hayes should consider a transfer, different department, different reporting structure, to avoid any appearance of impropriety." It was a trap. Daniel could see it clearly. Accept the transfer, and Richard would paint him as someone using his marriage for career advancement. Refuse, and Richard would use it as evidence of an inappropriate work relationship. "I don't want to transfer," Daniel said. "I'm good at my job. I like my team. Moving me would be disruptive to ongoing projects." How noble. Richard's tone made it sound like anything but. "Still, I think the board should vote on establishing new policies regarding spousal employment. Clear guidelines to prevent any appearance of favoritism." The meeting devolved from there. Policies proposed and debated. Veiled accusations dressed up as concerns. Richard orchestrating the whole thing like a conductor leading a symphony of doubt. Elena held her ground, professional and unshakable. But Daniel could see the cost in the tightness around her eyes, the controlled precision of her words. She was bleeding, just slowly enough that no one else noticed. When it finally ended, they walked to her office in silence. Elena closed the door and leaned against it, eyes shut. "He's going to keep pushing," she said, "until he finds something that sticks. So we don't give him anything to find." "We're living a lie, Daniel. Eventually, someone's going to notice." "It's not a lie." The words came out harder than he intended. "We're married, legally. We live together. We're raising Jamie together. What part of that is fake? The part where we're strangers playing house." Elena opened her eyes, and Daniel saw the exhaustion there, the fear. "The part where we got married for a corporate clause instead of love. The part where we sleep in separate rooms and barely know each other's favorite colors." "Blue," Daniel said. "What?" "Your favorite color. It's blue. Specifically that shade of blue right before the sun comes up, when the sky's still dark but starting to lighten. You had a scarf that color once. You wore it to a company meeting 2 years ago, and I remember thinking it was the first time I'd seen you wear something that wasn't gray or black." Elena stared at him. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things." Daniel moved closer. "Green. Your favorite color is actually green, isn't it? Because you keep buying plants for the house, little succulents and herbs. You think I don't notice, but I do." "Forest green," Elena admitted quietly. "Specifically, the color of pine trees in winter." "See?" We're learning. Daniel, we don't have to have all the answers right now. We just have to keep taking the next step. He reached out, squeezed her hand, a gesture that was becoming familiar, comforting. Your father wants us to crack under pressure, so we don't crack. We bend. We adapt. We figure it out. Elena's fingers tightened around his. When did you become the optimistic one? Since I married someone who needed me to be. She laughed, shaky but real. We're a mess. We're surviving. There's a difference. The intercom on Elena's desk buzzed. Her assistant's voice crackled through. Ms. Voss, there's a reporter here from the Tribune. She's asking for a statement about the marriage. Elena and Daniel exchanged glances. Send her away, Elena said. She says she has questions about Mr. Hayes' background, specifically about his ex-partner and the custody situation. Daniel's blood went cold. Sarah. Who's Sarah? Elena asked. Jamie's mother. She left when he was 2. Signed away custody, wanted nothing to do with us. His mind was racing. If they're digging into that, they'll twist it, make it look like you're hiding something. Elena pressed the intercom button. Tell the reporter no comment, and get legal on the phone, now. The story broke that night. Not in the Tribune, but in a gossip blog that specialized in corporate scandal. The headline made Daniel's stomach turn, CEO's secret. Husband, deadbeat dad, or desperate gold digger. The article was a hatchet job, half-truths twisted into implications. Sarah's disappearance framed as Daniel driving her away. The custody arrangement painted as him stealing Jamie from a loving mother. His financial struggles used as evidence of opportunism. Every piece of his life dissected and reassembled into something ugly. Elena found him on the back porch, staring at his phone with numb horror. Don't read it, she said. Too late. Legal is already drafting a response. We'll sue for libel. This is defamation, clear and simple. It doesn't matter. Daniel set the phone down. People will believe what they want to believe. And what they want to believe is that I'm using you for money, and I'm a terrible father and I drove Jamie's mother away. None of that is true. Truth doesn't matter when the lie is more interesting. Elena sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Tell me about Sarah, the real story. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, we were young, 23, 24. She got pregnant and we tried to make it work, but we were both drowning. I was working 2 jobs. She was struggling with postpartum depression that we couldn't afford to treat. When Jamie was 2, she left. Just packed a bag one morning and left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore. Did you try to find her? For about 6 months. Then I got a legal letter from her lawyer. She wanted to sign away custody, wanted me to agree not to pursue child support. She just wanted out completely. Daniel's voice went rough. I signed. I figured Jamie was better off with one parent who wanted him than 2 parents where one resented him. That must have been hard. It was the easiest decision I ever made because Jamie is... Daniel stopped, collecting himself. He's everything good in my life. The idea that I'm a deadbeat dad, that I drove her away, that I'm somehow the villain in that story. The people who matter know the truth, Elena said firmly. Your son knows. I know. Everyone else can think whatever they want. Your board won't see it that way. Your father definitely won't. Let them try to use it against us. I dare them. There was steel in Elena's voice. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see a man who chose his child over his pride, who worked himself to exhaustion to give that child a good life, who stayed when staying was the hard thing. That's not a weakness, Daniel. That's strength. Daniel looked at her, really looked. In the porch light, she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her CEO polish and everything to do with the fierce certainty in her eyes. Why are you so sure? He asked. Because I know what it's like to be judged for things outside your control, to have people assume the worst because it fits their narrative better. Elena's hand found his. We're in this together. That means your fights are my fights now. That's not part of the deal. It is now. They sat in the dark, hands linked, 2 people bound by circumstance, learning to be bound by choice. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of Elena's garden run herbs and the distant sound of traffic. Normal sounds. Ordinary. Everything their situation wasn't. Forest Green, Daniel said suddenly. Elena turned to him, confused. What? Your favorite color? You said forest green, the color of pine trees in winter. He smiled. I'm learning. Orange? Elena replied. Yours is orange, like sunset. I noticed you always pause at the window around 6 o'clock when the light starts to change. I didn't think you noticed things like that. I notice everything about you. The admission seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. I've been noticing since that night with the cupcake. Maybe before. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them had planned for. Daniel became acutely aware of her hand in his, the warmth of her shoulder against his, the way she was looking at him like he was something more than a convenient solution to a corporate problem. Elena, I know. I know this is complicated. I know we agreed to keep things professional. She didn't move away. But I can't stop noticing you, Daniel, and I don't think you can stop noticing me either. She was right. He couldn't. From the moment he'd agreed to this insane arrangement, Elena had been working her way under his skin. The way she was with Jamie, the way she fought for what mattered, the way she looked at him like he was someone worth seeing. This is a bad idea, Daniel said. Probably. It'll complicate everything. Definitely. We should keep our distance, stay focused on the arrangement. We should, Elena agreed. Neither of them moved. The kiss, when it happened, was slow and deliberate. Not the brief procedural press of lips at their courthouse wedding, but something real and searching and full of questions neither of them could answer. Elena's hand came up to cup his face, gentle and uncertain. Daniel pulled her closer, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, fast and unsteady. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena laughed shakily. That was definitely not professional. No, Daniel agreed. But I'm not sure I care anymore. What does this mean? For us? I don't know, but I'm tired of pretending this is just business. Daniel brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I like you, Elena. I like who you are when you're not being CEO Voss. I like how you are with Jamie. I like that you notice sunsets and buy too many plants and stay up too late reading in bed. How do you know I read in bed? I can see your light under the door. Every night, almost until 1. He smiled. I notice things too. Elena leaned into him, her head finding his shoulder. This is going to make everything more complicated. Everything's already complicated. Might as well be complicated together. They stayed like that until the porch light drew moths and the neighbor's dog started barking at shadows. Two people who'd started as strangers, become partners, and were now navigating something that looked dangerously close to real. When they finally went inside, Elena paused at the stairs. Daniel? Yeah? My favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo. I reread it every year, always in winter. Daniel smiled. Mine's The Phantom Toll Booth. I read it to Jamie at least twice a year. He's got the whole thing memorized. We're still learning, Elena said. We've got time. She kissed him again, brief and sweet, then headed upstairs. Daniel watched her go, this woman who was his wife in name, and becoming something more in reality. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame? It won't last. People like you don't belong in Elena's world. You'll drag her down with you. Daniel deleted it without responding. Let them think what they wanted. He knew the truth. And more importantly, Elena knew the truth. The rest was just noise. The threatening messages kept coming. Different numbers, same message. Daniel started deleting them without reading, but Elena noticed the way his jaw tightened every time his phone buzzed. You need to tell me what's going on, she said one morning over coffee. Jamie was upstairs getting ready for school, giving them a rare moment of privacy. Daniel showed her the latest message. You're making her look weak. Do the right thing and walk away before you destroy her career. Elena's expression went cold. These are coming from inside the company. You don't know that. The phrasing, the focus on career optics. This isn't random internet trolls. She grabbed her own phone. I'm having IT trace these numbers. Elena, it's just noise. It's targeted harassment designed to destabilize our marriage and undermine my position. She was already typing. Someone wants you gone, and they're using psychological warfare to make it happen. Let me guess. Your father. Maybe. Or someone who thinks getting rid of you will earn them points with him. Elena set her phone down, reached across the table to take his hand. Whatever they're trying to do, it won't work. You know that, right? Daniel wanted to believe her, but the messages were getting to him, burrowing under his skin with their certainty that he didn't belong, that he was a liability, that Elena would be better off without him. The worst part was that some of it felt true. Work became increasingly uncomfortable. Daniel's co-workers had always been friendly, but now there was distance. Whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Sideways glances. His supervisor, Tom, called him in for a meeting that felt like an interrogation disguised as a check-in. "Just wanted to see how you're doing," Tom said, not quite meeting Daniel's eyes. "Big changes in your personal life. Want to make sure it's not affecting your work." "My work is fine. Better than fine. I hit every deadline last quarter." "You did. No complaints there." Tom shifted in his chair. "But there's been some talk about favoritism, about whether your relationship with Ms. Voss creates conflicts of interest. I don't report to her. I don't work directly with her. There's no conflict. On paper, no, but perception matters." Tom finally looked at him directly. "I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. Some people think you're getting special treatment, that your numbers look good because someone upstairs is making sure they look good." Daniel's hands clenched under the desk. "My numbers look good because I do good work. I've been doing good work here for 3 years. That hasn't changed." I know that," Tom sighed. "Look, I'm on your side, but you need to be aware that people are watching. Everything you do gets scrutinized now. Every report, every analysis, every interaction. Fair or not, that's the reality." The reality was that Daniel couldn't win. Work harder, and people would say Elena was feeding him easy projects. Make a mistake, and people would say he was incompetent and only kept around because of who he married. There was no right answer, no way to prove himself that wouldn't be twisted into evidence of something corrupt. He told Elena that night after Jamie went to bed. They'd fallen into a routine over the past 2 weeks, dinner together, homework help, then quiet evenings where they actually talked. The separate bedrooms remained, but the distance between them had narrowed considerably. "They want you to quit," Elena said flatly. "That's the play. Make work so uncomfortable that you resign, and then they can paint it as the marriage falling apart. Evidence that we rushed into something fake. So I stay and let them make my life hell? You stay and we find another way." Elena was pacing now, her strategic mind clearly working through scenarios. "We need to shift the narrative, show that you're an asset, not a liability." "How do we do that?" "I don't know yet, but there has to be something. Some way to prove that you're here because you're good at what you do, not because you're married to me." The opportunity came from an unexpected source. Daniel was reviewing quarterly vendor reports when something caught his eye. A pattern in the numbers that didn't quite add up. 3 separate vendors, all providing similar services, all charging rates that seemed inflated compared to market standards. He dug deeper, pulling historical data, comparing contracts, mapping payment flows. The more he looked, the worse it got. These weren't just overpriced vendors. They were shell companies, all created within the last 2 years, all billing for services that Daniel couldn't verify had actually been performed. Someone was bleeding the company dry, and they'd been doing it for a while. Daniel worked through the night, building the case. By morning, he had a preliminary analysis showing roughly $8 million in fraudulent vendor payments over 18 months. The money was being siphoned through a complex web of shell corporations, but the pattern was clear once you knew where to look. The question was what to do with it. He could take it to Tom, go through proper channels. But given the current climate, would anyone believe him? Or would they assume he was manufacturing evidence to make himself look valuable? He could take it to Elena, but that felt wrong too, like he was running to his wife instead of handling it himself. In the end, Elena found him in his home office at 6 in the morning, surrounded by printouts and empty coffee cups, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. "Have you slept?" she asked from the doorway. "Define sleep." "Daniel, I found something in the vendor reports." He handed her the summary analysis. Someone's been running a fraud scheme. $8 million, maybe more. Shell companies billing for services never rendered. Elena scanned the document, her expression growing darker with each page. "How long have you known about this?" "Since yesterday afternoon. I've been verifying the data, making sure I wasn't seeing patterns that weren't there." "This is solid work, really solid." She looked up at him. "Do you know who's behind it?" "The shell companies are registered to a holding group called Vanguard Solutions. I can't find a clear owner, but the registration addresses all trace back to properties owned by board members or their immediate family. Which board members? Daniel pulled up another document. Carlson, Whitmore, and your father. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush. Elena set the papers down carefully. My father. I don't have direct proof yet, but the circumstantial evidence is strong. These companies were created right after he stepped down as CEO. The billing patterns coincide with board meetings where these three had private sessions. He's stealing from his own company. Technically, your company now, but yes. Elena moved to the window, staring out at the sunrise neither of them had stayed awake to see. He told me I wasn't ready, that I was too young, too inexperienced, that I'd run the company into the ground without his guidance. Her voice was hollow. He was positioning himself to be the savior, the one who could step back in and fix everything when I inevitably failed. Except you didn't fail. No. So he's making sure I have a crisis he can fix. Or better yet, a crisis he can use to force me out. Elena turned back to Daniel. This is it. This is what we needed. Evidence that the threat to the company isn't me, or my marriage, or my age. It's him. What do we do with it? We take it to the board, emergency meeting, we lay out everything you found, and we force them to investigate. Elena, your father will destroy me. He'll say I fabricated this, that I'm trying to deflect from my own inadequacy. Let him try. There was fire in her eyes now. You have documentation, data, hard evidence. He has excuses and influence. We'll see which one the board values more. This could backfire. It could make everything worse. Or it could save the company and prove that you're exactly who I said you were. Elena crossed to him, took his face in her hands. I trust you. Your work. Your integrity. Do you trust me? Daniel thought about the past month, the way Elena had fought for Jamie when the media came calling, the way she'd stood beside him when the gossip blogs tore him apart, the way she looked at him now, like he was capable of things he'd never believed himself capable of. Yeah, he said. I trust you. Then let's burn his empire down. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 2 days later. Daniel spent every waking hour preparing, building an airtight case that even the most skeptical board member couldn't dismiss. Elena worked the political angles, making calls, gathering allies, ensuring they'd have support when the moment came. Richard Voss caught wind of the meeting and demanded to know the agenda. Elena told him it was a financial review. Routine. Nothing to worry about. His eyes had narrowed, but he'd said nothing. The morning of the meeting, Daniel stood in his bedroom trying to tie his tie for the 5th time. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. This was it. The moment that would either vindicate him or destroy everything they'd built. Elena appeared in his doorway. You look terrified. I am terrified. Good. That means you understand what's at stake. She moved into the room, gently took the tie from his fumbling fingers. But you're also prepared. You know this material inside and out. You've got evidence that would hold up in court. And you're not doing this alone. Your father is going to come after me with everything he has. And I'm going to stand right beside you and dare him to try. Elena finished the tie, smoothed it down. You saved this company, Daniel. You found fraud that could have destroyed us. That makes you a hero, whether anyone else sees it or not. I'm not a hero. I'm a data analyst who got lucky. You're a data analyst who cared enough to look deeper, who put in the work even though you didn't have to, who risked your own reputation to protect something bigger than yourself. She kissed him, quick and certain. That's heroism, the quiet kind that actually matters. Jamie bounded into the room, already dressed in his school uniform. Are you guys going to kiss again? Because Mrs. Chen says married people kiss a lot, and I'm trying to see if that's true. Elena laughed, the tension breaking. Mrs. Chen sounds very wise. She is. She makes really good cookies, too. Jamie looked between them. You both look fancy. Is something important happening? Something very important, Daniel said. But we'll tell you about it later, okay? Okay. Can I have waffles for breakfast? You can have whatever you want. They ate breakfast together, the three of them, like a real family instead of an arrangement. Jamie chattered about his art project at school. Elena listened like it was the most important presentation she'd ever heard. Daniel watched them and felt his resolve solidify into something unbreakable. He was fighting for this, for them, for the life they were building that had started as pretend and become something real. The boardroom felt different this time. Tense, expectant. The board members filed in looking confused about the emergency meeting, but Richard Voss looked calm. Too calm. He knows something, Daniel thought. Or he thinks he does. Elena called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We've discovered a serious issue that requires immediate board attention and action. What kind of issue? Carlson asked. He was sweating already. Financial fraud. Vendor payments to shell corporations for services never rendered. Approximately $8 million over 18 months. Elena nodded to Daniel. My husband discovered the pattern during routine quarterly analysis. Daniel, would you walk the board through your findings? Every eye turned to him. Daniel stood, feeling exposed and vulnerable and absolutely certain. 3 vendors caught my attention initially, he began, pulling up the first slide of his presentation. Apex Consulting, Meridian Solutions, and Summit Strategic Partners. All provided similar services. All charged premium rates. All appeared on our books within a 6-month period 2 years ago. He walked them through it. The shell company structures, the billing patterns, the lack of deliverables, the money trails that led to holding companies owned by board members' family trusts. The room grew quieter with each revelation. Richard Voss sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. These findings suggest coordinated fraud at the highest level, Daniel concluded. The evidence points to 3 board members being directly involved in the creation and operation of these shell vendors. This is outrageous, Whitmore sputtered. You're accusing us of theft based on circumstantial evidence. I'm presenting data, Daniel interrupted. You can draw your own conclusions, but the pattern is clear. Someone has been systematically stealing from this company, and that someone had access to approve these vendor contracts. Who approved them? The gray-haired board member, Mrs. Chen's boss, whose name Daniel had finally learned was Margaret Torres, asked sharply. Daniel pulled up the authorization records. Executive approval, which at the time these contracts were initiated would have required sign-off from either the CEO or the chairman of the board. I was CEO 2 years ago, Richard said calmly. Are you accusing me, Mr. Hayes? The room held its breath. I'm saying the approval chain leads back to the executive level. Whether that was knowing participation or exploitation of trust, I can't say. But someone with authority allowed these companies to be added as approved vendors. This is clearly a desperate attempt to deflect attention from his own inadequacy, Richard addressed the board, ignoring Daniel entirely. My daughter's husband, feeling the pressure of scrutiny, manufactures a conspiracy theory to make himself look valuable. It's transparent and frankly embarrassing. The evidence isn't manufactured, Elena said coldly. Every document Daniel presented can be verified through our own financial records. We can bring in external auditors right now if you'd like. I think we should, Margaret Torres said. This is serious enough to warrant independent investigation. Agreed, another board member said. The votes came quickly, unanimous for an external audit. Richard's influence couldn't stop it, not when the evidence was this clear, but Richard wasn't done. Before we adjourn, he said, standing, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. This presentation, while thorough, was prepared by a man who has every personal incentive to prove his value to this company. A man whose marriage to our CEO is, shall we say, conveniently timed to avoid certain corporate requirements. We're not doing this again, Elena said, her voice sharp. We absolutely are doing this. Because if Daniel here is willing to fabricate fraud charges to make himself look good, what else is he willing to fabricate? How do we know this marriage is legitimate? How do we know any of this isn't an elaborate performance designed to protect Elena's position? Because I have documentation, Daniel said quietly. Marriage license, cohabitation records, shared finances. But you know what? Even if I didn't, it wouldn't change the numbers in this report. $8 million is missing. Someone took it, and that someone is getting very defensive about being investigated. Richard's mask slipped, just for a second, but enough for everyone to see the anger underneath. You're out of your depth, Mr. Hayes. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A man who can't stand that his daughter is better at this job than he ever was. A man who's been sabotaging her since the day she took over. A man who's so threatened by her success that he's literally stealing from his own company to create a crisis he can swoop in and fix. That's enough, Richard snapped. No, it's not. Daniel felt something break loose inside him. All the fear, all the doubt, all the feeling like he didn't belong. It crystallized into clarity. You've been coming after me since the moment Elena and I got married. The background checks, the media leaks, the threatening messages. You want me gone because as long as I'm here, your clause has no power. As long as Elena's married, you can't force her out. Threatening messages? Margaret Torres leaned forward. What messages? Daniel pulled out his phone, showed her the texts. Showed all of them. These have been coming for weeks. Always after board meetings. Always focused on me being a liability to Elena's career. And they all come from burner phones registered to corporate accounts. That proves nothing, Richard said, but he'd gone pale. I T-traced them, Elena said. She'd been quiet, letting Daniel build the case, but now she stepped in. The phones were purchased using a corporate card registered to Vanguard Solutions, the same holding company that owns the shell vendors, the same company registered to properties in your name, Father. The silence was absolute. Margaret Torres stood. I'm calling for an immediate vote. Richard Voss is hereby removed from all board positions pending the outcome of the external audit. All in favor? Hands went up. Not all of them, but enough. Richard looked around the room, seeing his power crumble in real time. You're making a mistake, all of you. Elena isn't capable of running this company without guidance. I've been running it just fine, Elena said. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the emotion underneath. Better than fine. I've grown revenue 30%. I've expanded into new markets. I've increased employee satisfaction and retention, all while you've been actively working to destroy me. I'm your father. You're a thief and a saboteur, and someone who cares more about control than about his own daughter. Elena's composure finally cracked, just a little. I wanted your approval. I wanted you to be proud, but you couldn't handle the fact that I was succeeding without you, that I didn't need you to save me. Richard's expression hardened. You'll regret this, both of you. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were sooner. Elena turned to the board. The audit will begin immediately. All vendor contracts will be frozen pending review, and I want a full investigation into every corporate account linked to Vanguard Solutions. The board members nodded, some looking shell-shocked, others grimly satisfied. Richard left without another word, his footsteps echoing in the hall. Daniel felt like he might collapse. The adrenaline that had carried him through the presentation was wearing off, leaving him shaky and exhausted. Elena dismissed the board, then turned to him as soon as the room emptied. You did it, she said. We did it. No, you did it. You found the fraud. You built the case. You stood up to him when everyone else was too afraid. She pulled him into a fierce hug. You saved the company, Daniel. You saved me. I just looked at the numbers. You looked when no one else was looking. You cared when you didn't have to. Elena pulled back, her eyes bright. Do you understand what this means? You're not the liability. You're not the gold digger or the opportunist or any of the things they've been calling you. You're the person who cared enough about this company to fight for it. Daniel's phone started buzzing. Texts from Tom, from other colleagues. The news was already spreading through the building. This is going to get messy, he said. Probably, but we'll handle it together. Together, Daniel echoed. They walked out of the boardroom side by side. Two people who'd started as strangers, become partners, and were now something neither of them had planned for, but both of them needed. The company was in crisis. Richard Voss was out for blood. The media would have a field day when the story broke. But Daniel had Elena's hand in his, and that felt like enough. The audit took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of investigators combing through every financial record, interviewing employees, tracking money trails. Daniel was questioned 5 times, his analysis scrutinized from every angle. Every time the evidence held up, Richard tried to fight it, hired lawyers, threatened lawsuits, called in favors from old business partners. But the numbers didn't lie, and the more investigators dug, the worse it looked. Carlson and Whitmore flipped almost immediately, cutting deals to testify against Richard in exchange for reduced penalties. The shell companies were dismantled. The stolen money was recovered. And Richard Voss, former CEO and chairman, was formally charged with corporate fraud. The story dominated business news for a week. CEO's father arrested for embezzlement. Data analyst. Husband uncovers million-dollar fraud. From office romance to corporate scandal. The narrative shifted overnight. Daniel wasn't the gold digger anymore. He was the hero. The nobody who'd taken down a corporate titan. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, Daniel just felt tired. He found Elena in her office late one night, staring at a family photo on her desk. Her father, younger, smiling, before everything went wrong. "You okay?" Daniel asked from the doorway. "I don't know." Elena set the photo down. "He's my father. I should feel something other than relief that he's gone." "You can feel both. Relief and grief. They're not mutually exclusive. He tried to destroy me. He stole from the company. He sent you threatening messages." Elena's voice cracked. "And I still wish things had been different, that he could have just been proud of me instead of threatened by me." Daniel crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. She let herself lean into him, the weight of the past weeks finally catching up. "I know this doesn't help," he said quietly, "but you didn't do anything wrong. You built something amazing, and he couldn't handle it. That's on him, not you. I keep wondering if I missed something, if there were signs I should have seen. He was your father. You trusted him. That's not a weakness." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Thank you for finding the truth, for not backing down even when it would have been easier. You stood by me when the whole world was calling me a fraud. This was the least I could do." "It wasn't the least. It was everything." She pulled back, looked up at him. "I know we started this as an arrangement, a business deal. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me. You became real for me." Daniel's heart kicked against his ribs. "Elena, I love you." The words came out rushed, like she'd been holding them back and they'd finally broken free. "I know that's not part of the deal. I know we never talked about real feelings or actual marriage. But I can't keep pretending this is just convenient. You're not convenient, Daniel. You're necessary." Daniel kissed her. Not careful or tentative like before, but certain. "I love you too. I think I have since that night with the cupcake, if I'm being honest. You saw me when I was invisible. You made me feel like I mattered. You do matter. You matter so much." They stood in her office, holding each other while the city lights glittered below and the future stretched out uncertain, but theirs to build. "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now we go home. We tuck Jamie in. We figure out how to be an actual married couple instead of two people pretending." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I, but I'm pretty good at figuring things out as I go." Elena laughed, watery but real. "The next thing? Always the next thing." They left the office together, turning off lights, locking doors, marking the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. The company was secure. Richard was facing justice. And Daniel and Elena were finally, actually, honestly married. Not because of a corporate clause or a desperate joke, but because somewhere in the chaos, they'd chosen each other. And that was the only thing that mattered. Jamie was still awake when they got home, curled up on the couch with Mrs. Chen watching a nature documentary about penguins. He jumped up the moment they walked in. "Did you win?" he asked, looking between them with the unfiltered hope only a 6-year-old could manage. Daniel crouched down to his level. "Yeah, buddy, we won." "What did you win?" "It's complicated, but the short version is that some people were doing bad things at Elena's company, and we stopped them." Jamie processed this with the seriousness he reserved for important matters. "Like superheroes?" "Sort of, except with spreadsheets instead of capes. Spreadsheets are boring. They can be, but sometimes they save the day." Daniel pulled Jamie into a hug, feeling the small, solid weight of his son against his chest. Everything they'd done, all the risk and fear and fighting, it was for this. For Jamie to have a stable home. A future that wasn't defined by struggling. Mrs. Chen gathered her things, patting Elena's arm on her way out. "You look exhausted, dear. Both of you. Get some rest." After she left, the three of them stood in the living room in a silence that felt different than before. Heavier. Like something had fundamentally shifted and none of them quite knew how to navigate it. "I'm hungry," Jamie announced, breaking the tension. Elena laughed. "When are you not hungry?" "Never. Dad says I'm a growing boy." "You are definitely growing. What do you want?" Grilled cheese? I can make grilled cheese, Elena said, then paused. Actually, I have no idea if I can make grilled cheese. I've never tried. It's not hard, Daniel said. Oh, come on, I'll show you. They ended up in the kitchen together, Daniel walking Elena through the absurdly simple process of buttering bread and melting cheese. She approached it with the same focused intensity she brought to board meetings, asking questions about heat levels and timing like she was preparing for an exam. Jamie sat at the counter, swinging his legs and providing running commentary. You have to flip it at exactly the right time or it burns. Dad burns them sometimes, but he says that's how he likes them. I do not burn them. I prefer them well done. That's what burning is, Dad. Elena was smiling, genuinely smiling, in a way Daniel had rarely seen. The corporate armor was completely gone, replaced by something softer and infinitely more real. She flipped the sandwich with exaggerated care, then looked at Daniel for approval. Perfect, he said. Liar. But I appreciate it. They ate together at the kitchen table, Jamie talking about penguins and how they mate for life, and wasn't that romantic? Elena met Daniel's eyes over Jamie's head, something unspoken passing between them. Mate for life. The words echoed in Daniel's head long after Jamie had been tucked into his rocket ship bed, and the house had settled into quiet. He found Elena on his back porch again, the place that was becoming theirs. She'd changed out of her work clothes into sweats and an old college t-shirt, looking younger and more vulnerable than her 31 years. Can't sleep? Daniel asked, settling beside her. Too much in my head. Elena pulled her knees up to her chest. I keep thinking about what happens next. The trial. The media. Rebuilding the board. There's so much to do and I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So don't think about it tonight. Think about it tomorrow. Is that your philosophy? Scarlett O'Hara yourself through life's problems. Daniel grinned. You know Gone with the Wind. I know a lot of things. I'm not just a corporate robot. I never thought you were. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. It was becoming automatic, this reaching for each other. What are you really worried about? Elena was quiet for a long moment. That this was the easy part. That we survived the immediate crisis, but everything after is going to be harder. That we said we love each other in the heat of the moment, and tomorrow we'll wake up and realize it was just adrenaline. Do you think that's what it was? No, but I'm terrified it might be. Daniel shifted to face her fully. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. I didn't fall in love with you because you saved me from poverty, or because you're beautiful, or because you're successful. I fell in love with you because you bought me a cupcake when you didn't have to, because you noticed I existed, because you're patient with my kid and you're learning to make grilled cheese, and you read The Count of Monte Cristo every winter like it's a religious text. It is a religious text. Revenge and redemption. What else do you need? See? That. The way you're completely serious about ridiculous things and ridiculous about serious things. The way you fight for what matters and don't apologize for taking up space. Daniel cupped her face. This isn't adrenaline. This is me, sober and exhausted and completely certain that I want to build a life with you. A real one, not an arrangement. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm not good at this. At being vulnerable. At letting people in. I know. But you let me in. You let Jamie in. Because you didn't give me a choice. You just showed up with your honesty and your terrible jokes and your ability to see through all my defenses. Terrible jokes? My jokes are amazing. They're really not. Elena kissed him, tasting of tears and coffee and something that felt like coming home. Move into my room. Really move in. Not separate bedrooms and careful distance. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up next to you and figure out how to be married for real. You sure? No going back once we cross that line. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward with you. Daniel kissed her again, deeper this time, feeling the last of the walls between them crumble. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Now? Why wait? We've been doing everything else at lightning speed. Might as well maintain the pace. They moved Daniel's things that night, which mostly meant grabbing his clothes and toiletries and moving them down the hall. Elena's room was larger than his, decorated in soft grays and whites, with actual art on the walls and furniture that matched. It felt grown up in a way Daniel's spaces never had. I'm going to mess up your aesthetic, he said, dumping his duffel bag on the floor. I don't care about aesthetic. I care about you being here. They got ready for bed in a comfortable silence, navigating the shared bathroom space with surprising ease. Elena had a whole skincare routine that fascinated Daniel. He brushed his teeth and called it done. She had 7 different products. Is that really necessary? He asked, watching her in the mirror. You want me to keep looking 31 instead of 60? Then yes. You'd look beautiful at 60. Sweet talker. They climbed into bed on opposite sides, the space between them suddenly feeling vast and charged. Daniel could hear Elena breathing, could feel the warmth of her beside him, could sense her uncertainty matching his own. This is weird, right? Elena said into the darkness. Super weird. We're married, and we've kissed, and we said we love each other, but actually sleeping in the same bed feels like the most intimate thing we've done. Because it is. Anyone can kiss. Sleeping together means trust. Daniel rolled onto his side to face her. Come here. Elena moved into his arms, tentative at first, then settling against him like she'd been doing it for years. Her head found his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist. They fit together in a way that felt both surprising and inevitable. I like this, Elena murmured. Me too. Don't snore. No promises. She did eventually fall asleep, her breathing evening out, her body relaxing completely. Daniel stayed awake longer, marveling at the turn his life had taken. 2 months ago, he'd been alone, struggling, convinced he'd spend the rest of his life just barely making it. Now he was married to an incredible woman, living in a house he couldn't have afforded in a dozen lifetimes, holding someone who loved him for reasons that had nothing to do with what he could provide and everything to do with who he was. It felt like a dream, the kind you were afraid to believe in because waking up would hurt too much. But Elena was solid and real in his arms, and Jamie was safe down the hall, and for the first time in years, Daniel let himself believe that maybe things could actually work out. The next morning brought new challenges. The audit results were released publicly, and the media descended like locusts. News vans parked outside their house. Reporters shouted questions whenever Daniel left for work or picked up Jamie from school. The story had everything: corporate fraud, family betrayal, an unlikely hero in the form of a nobody data analyst. Daniel hated every second of it. Just ignore them, Elena advised over breakfast. They'll move on to the next scandal eventually. Eventually could be months. So we endure for months. We've survived worse. Jamie looked between them, syrup on his chin. Are the camera people going to be there when we go to school? Probably, buddy, but Marcus will make sure they keep their distance. Can I wave? You can wave, but don't say anything. They're going to try to get you to talk. I know. Elena told me. Stranger danger, but for grown-ups with microphones. Elena smiled. Exactly right. Work was its own kind of circus. Daniel walked into the office to find his cubicle decorated with congratulatory balloons and cards. His coworkers, the same ones who'd been giving him the cold shoulder for weeks, suddenly wanted to shake his hand and hear the whole story. Tom pulled him aside before he could even sit down. You're a legend. The whole company's talking about it. You took down Richard Voss. I just found some irregularities in the vendor reports. You found $8 million in fraud and exposed the former CEO. That's not just finding irregularities. Tom's expression turned serious. Look, I know things were rough for you these past few weeks. The talk, the speculation. I should have shut it down. I should have had your back. You were in a tough position. I was a coward. I let people trash your reputation because it was easier than standing up for you. Tom met his eyes. I'm sorry, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows that you earned your place here long before you married Elena Voss. The apology meant more than Daniel expected. Thanks, I appreciate that. Also, Elena wants to see you. Something about a promotion. Daniel's stomach dropped. A promotion. Don't look so terrified. You saved the company. Some recognition is warranted. But Daniel knew how it would look. Married the CEO, exposed her father, got promoted. The narrative practically wrote itself. Never mind that he'd been doing good work for years. Never mind that he'd earned any advancement on merit. People would see what they wanted to see. Elena's office felt different now. Less intimidating, more familiar. She looked up when he entered, her professional mask in place, but her eyes warm. Close the door, she said. Daniel did. I heard something about a promotion. Senior Director of Financial Analysis, significant raise, your own team. You'd be reporting to the CFO, completely separate from my chain of command. Elena, before you say no, listen. This isn't favoritism. This isn't me rewarding my husband. This is the company recognizing exceptional work. Elena pulled out a folder, handed it to him. These are your performance reviews for the past 3 years, consistently top-rated. These are the projects you've completed and the money you've saved the company. The vendor fraud investigation was just the most visible. You've been doing this level of work the entire time. Daniel flipped through the folder. She was right. His record was solid, better than solid. The board approved this unanimously, Elena continued. Margaret Torres specifically said that if we let you slip away to a competitor because we were too afraid of optics, we deserve to fail. People are still going to say I got it because of you. People are going to say things regardless. They said you were a gold digger. They said you were incompetent. They said our marriage was fake. They were wrong about all of it. Elena stood, moved around her desk to stand in front of him. You can turn this down. You can stay in your current position and no one will think less of you, but don't turn it down because you're afraid of what people might say. Turn it down because you genuinely don't want it. I want it. Of course I want it. Then take it. Own it. You earned this, Daniel, long before you married me. Daniel looked at the offer letter, the salary that would change everything for him and Jamie, the title that represented validation he hadn't realized he needed. Okay, he said. I'll take it. Elena's smile was brilliant. Good. You start Monday, and before you ask, no, we will not be working directly together. Separate divisions, separate reporting structures, completely professional, except for the part where we go home together every night. Except for that. Daniel pulled her close, kissing her despite the glass walls of her office and the potential for anyone to see. Thank you for believing in me, for fighting for this. Always, Elena said. That's what partners do. The promotion announcement went out that afternoon. The reaction was exactly what Daniel expected. Congratulations mixed with skepticism, genuine happiness mixed with thinly veiled insinuation. He ignored most of it, focusing on the transition, meeting his new team, learning the scope of his expanded responsibilities. His new office was on a different floor, away from Elena, with an actual door and windows that faced the city. It felt surreal. 3 months ago, he'd been worried about making rent. Now he was a senior director with a salary that would let him breathe for the first time in years. That evening, he took Elena and Jamie out to dinner to celebrate. Nothing fancy. Jamie had strong opinions about fancy restaurants being boring, but a nice Italian place with good pasta and breadsticks Jamie could demolish. So you're really important now? Jamie asked around a mouthful of spaghetti. I'm the same person, just with a different title. But you get paid more? Yes. Jamie considered this. Does that mean we can get a dog? Daniel and Elena exchanged glances. A dog is a big responsibility, Elena said carefully. I know, I'd take care of it, walk it and feed it and teach it tricks. Jamie's eyes were huge with hope. Please? I've always wanted a dog? Daniel's throat tightened. He'd always wanted to give Jamie a dog, but their old apartment didn't allow pets, and even if it had, he couldn't afford the vet bills. Now, sitting in this restaurant with his wife and son, that barrier felt like it had dissolved. We'll think about it, he said. That means yes! Jamie was practically bouncing in his seat. That means we'll think about it. Dogs are expensive and need a lot of care. But we have a yard now, and Marcus could help. She likes dogs. How do you know Marcus likes dogs? I asked her. She said she had a German shepherd named Bear when she was growing up. Elena was trying not to laugh. You're very thorough in your research. Dad says always know your audience. I say that about work presentations. Works for dogs, too. They did end up getting a dog. Not immediately, but 2 weeks later when Elena surprised them both by coming home with a gangly golden retriever puppy from a rescue. Jamie named her Scout, from To Kill a Mockingbird, which Jamie hadn't read but had seen on Elena's bookshelf and decided was a good literary name. The house became chaos. Puppy training and chewed furniture, and Jamie's delighted laughter when Scout learned to sit. Daniel found Elena at 2 a.m, sitting on the kitchen floor with Scout asleep in her lap, looking exhausted and content. What are you doing up? He asked. She was crying. I didn't want her to wake Jamie. Elena stroked Scout's soft ears. I've never had a dog before. My father didn't allow pets. Too messy, too unpredictable. Do you regret it? The mess and unpredictability? Not even a little bit. She looked up at him. I like this. Our life. The chaos and noise and Jamie tracking mud through the house, and now a puppy who thinks shoes are food. I like that it's not perfect or controlled. I like that it's real. Daniel sat beside her on the kitchen floor, Scout shifting to sprawl across both their laps. I never thought I'd have this. A family. A home that feels like home. Someone to share it with. Me neither. I thought I'd always be alone. That's what you sacrifice for success, right? Personal life for professional achievement. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. But you showed me I didn't have to choose, that I could have both. We both got a second chance, to be more than what we thought we had to be. They sat there until Scout woke up and needed to go outside, then stumbled back to bed together, exhausted and happy in a way that felt earned. Hard-won, real. The trial preparation consumed the next month. Daniel was called as a witness, had to sit through depositions where Richard's lawyers tried to tear apart his analysis. They questioned his methods, his credentials, his motives. They implied he'd fabricated evidence to frame an innocent man. Daniel held steady, backed by the documentation and his own certainty. The numbers didn't lie. Richard had stolen millions, and no amount of legal maneuvering could change that. Elena attended every deposition, sitting in the back of the room, her presence a silent support that made everything bearable. Afterward, she'd take him home, pour him a whiskey he was trying to develop a taste for, and let him decompress. His lawyers are brutal, Daniel said after a particularly rough session. They're trying to make it seem like I'm the criminal. That's their job, to create reasonable doubt. Elena handed him the glass. But the evidence is solid. The audit confirmed everything you found, the shell companies, the fake invoices, all of it. They can question your motives all they want, but they can't dispute the facts. What if it's not enough? What if he walks? Then we deal with that if it happens. But Daniel, you did everything right. You built an airtight case. The rest is out of our hands. The waiting was the worst part. Weeks of legal proceedings, motions, counter-motions. Richard's team fought every step, trying to delay, to confuse, to muddy the waters. The media coverage was relentless, dissecting every detail, spinning narratives that had little to do with truth and everything to do with entertainment. Through it all, Daniel focused on the basics. Work. Jamie. Elena. Scout, who had grown into a clumsy adolescent dog with more energy than sense. Their life had become almost normal, if you didn't count the ongoing legal drama and occasional paparazzi. Jamie adapted better than either of them expected. He made friends at his new school, joined the art club, came home with paintings that Elena insisted on hanging throughout the house. He called Elena by her first name, not Mom, but the affection was clear. The belonging. One night, Daniel found Jamie in bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling. Can't sleep? Daniel asked, sitting on the edge of the rocket bed. Just thinking. About what? About how different things are now. We used to live in the small apartment and eat mac and cheese a lot, and you were always tired. Daniel's chest tightened. I'm sorry about that. About not being able to give you more. I'm not sad about it. I'm just noticing. Jamie rolled onto his side to face him. You're happier now. You smile more. You don't have that look you used to get when the mail came. What look? Like you were scared and trying not to show it. Kids saw everything. Daniel had thought he was protecting Jamie, hiding his stress, but of course Jamie had noticed. Things are better now, Daniel said carefully. More stable. But I want you to know that even when things were hard, you were always the best part of my day. Always. I know. You told me that all the time. Jamie was quiet for a moment. Is Elena going to stay? Like, forever? What do you mean? Like, are you guys really married, or is it just pretend and one day she'll leave like Mom did? Daniel's heart broke and mended in the same breath. We're really married, and Elena's not going anywhere. Neither am I. Promise? I promise. Daniel brushed Jamie's hair back. I know it's been a lot of changes. New house, new school, Elena, Scout. That's a lot for anyone, especially a kid. I like the changes. I just wanted to make sure they're staying. They're staying. We're staying. This is our life now. Our family. Jamie smiled, sleepy and content. Cool. I like our family. Me too, buddy, me too. The trial finally started in October. Daniel testified on the third day, walking through his analysis with the prosecutor, then enduring cross-examination from Richard's defense team. They tried to rattle him, to make him seem uncertain or biased, but Daniel had lived with this data for months. He knew every number, every transaction, every connection. He watched Richard across the courtroom, the man who'd tried to destroy his daughter, who'd stolen from his own company, who'd sent threatening messages to drive Daniel away. Richard looked smaller now, less imposing. Just a man who'd chosen control over everything else and lost because of it. The verdict came after 6 days of deliberations. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Richard Voss was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to repay the stolen funds plus penalties. Elena sat rigid in the courtroom as the verdict was read, her hand tight in Daniel's. When it was over, she walked out without looking at her father, head high, spine straight. They didn't talk until they got home. Daniel sent Jamie to his room to play with Scout, then found Elena in their bedroom, staring out the window at nothing. Say something, he prompted gently. I don't know what to feel. Relief that it's over? Grief that my father is going to prison? Anger that he made choices that led to this? Elena turned to face him. Is it wrong that I'm not sad? No, he tried to destroy you. He hurt people. He made his choices. He's still my father. That doesn't obligate you to mourn him. You can feel however you feel. There's no right answer here. Elena moved into his arms, holding on tight. I keep thinking about what you said, about Sarah, that some people aren't built for staying. My father wasn't built for letting go of power. He couldn't accept that I'd surpassed him, and that flaw destroyed him. You're not responsible for his choices. I know, logically I know, but it still hurts. Daniel held her while she cried, quiet tears that she tried to hide but couldn't quite manage. This was the cost of winning, he realized. The price of survival. They'd saved the company, exposed the fraud, built something real together. But Elena had lost her father in the process, and no amount of justice could fill that void. Later, much later, when the tears had stopped and exhaustion had set in, Elena asked, what happens now? Now we live. We move forward. We build the life we want instead of the one we were handed. That simple? That complicated, Daniel corrected, but we do it together. That's the part that matters. Elena kissed him, soft and certain, together. They fell asleep tangled together, Scout somehow wedged between them despite being too big for the bed, Jamie's soft breathing audible through the baby monitor they'd never quite given up. A family built from circumstance and choice, imperfect and messy and absolutely real. The next morning brought coffee and breakfast chaos and Jamie's excited chatter about a field trip to the Science Museum. Normal. Ordinary. Everything their lives had needed to be and finally were. Daniel watched Elena help Jamie find his permission slip, watched her laugh when Scout stole a piece of toast from the table, watched her catch his eye and smile like they shared a secret the rest of the world couldn't understand. They'd survived. More than that, they'd built something worth surviving for. And tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own questions, its own need to figure things out as they went. But tonight, they had this: each other, their family, their life. It was enough. It was everything. 6 months after the trial ended, Daniel woke up to find Elena's side of the bed empty. He checked the time, 5:30 in the morning, too early even for her usual pre-dawn routine. Scout lifted her head from the foot of the bed, gave him a look that clearly said she wasn't moving, then went back to sleep. He found Elena in the kitchen, laptop open, coffee already cold beside her. She was wearing his old college sweatshirt, the one she'd stolen 3 weeks ago and refused to give back, her hair piled into a messy knot on top of her head. Couldn't sleep? Daniel asked, moving to make fresh coffee. Board meeting today. Henderson's retirement announcement. I need to have a replacement recommendation ready. It's 5:30 in the morning. The meeting isn't until 2. I know, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Elena closed the laptop with more force than necessary. What if I choose wrong? What if the board rejects my recommendation? What if you trust yourself? Daniel set a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. You've been CEO for almost 2 years now. Successful, 2 years. The company's thriving. You've rebuilt the board, cleaned up the corruption, implemented new oversight systems. You know what you're doing. Do I? Because some days I still feel like I'm 28 and everyone's waiting for me to prove I don't deserve to be here. Daniel sat across from her, took her hands. That feeling never completely goes away. I still sometimes walk into my office and wonder when someone's going to figure out I'm making it up as I go. You are making it up as you go. We both are. Exactly. That's the secret nobody tells you. Everyone's making it up. The difference is you're making it up while actually getting results. He squeezed her hands. Who are you thinking for Henderson's replacement? Margaret Torres. She's got the experience, the respect, and she's been instrumental in rebuilding trust after my father's fraud. So recommend her. The board will agree because it's the right choice. What if they don't? Then you make your case and you fight for it, like you always do. Daniel stood, pulled her up with him. Come back to bed. Sleep for another hour. The world won't end if you're not working at dawn. Elena let him lead her back upstairs, but Daniel could feel the tension in her shoulders, the weight she carried that never quite lifted. Success hadn't made her confident. It had just given her more to protect, more to lose. They'd been married almost a year now. A real year, not the desperate arrangement version, but actual partnership. They'd learned each other's rhythms, triggers, the small ways they needed support. Daniel had learned that Elena spiraled when she felt unprepared, that she needed reassurance disguised as logic. Elena had learned that Daniel withdrew when overwhelmed, that he needed space before he could talk. They fought sometimes, real fights about real things, how to handle Jamie's struggles with math, whether they should renovate the kitchen, why Elena worked until midnight when she didn't have to anymore. But they'd also learned how to come back from fights, how to apologize, how to choose each other, even when it was hard. The board meeting went exactly as Daniel predicted. Margaret Torres was nominated, unanimously approved, and Elena came home that evening looking exhausted but relieved. You were right, she said, kicking off her heels in the entryway. I'm always right. About what specifically this time? Torres. They loved the recommendation. Nobody questioned it. Because it was a good recommendation made by a CEO who knows what she's doing. Elena smiled tiredly. When did you become the optimistic one in this relationship? Since I married someone who needed me to be. She kissed him, soft and familiar. Jamie's at Marcus's place for a sleepover with her nephew. We have the house to ourselves. Dangerous proposition. I was thinking we could order pizza, watch a movie, fall asleep on the couch like normal people. Sounds perfect. They did exactly that. Terrible action movie neither of them paid attention to, pizza that was more grease than cheese. Scout sprawled across both of them, demanding attention. Ordinary, simple. Everything they'd both needed and never thought they'd have. I've been thinking, Elena said during a particularly ridiculous explosion scene, about the future. Our future. Daniel muted the TV. Okay. Jamie's not going to be 6 forever. He's going to grow up, have questions about us, about how we got together. We'll tell him the truth. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. That we got married so I could keep my job? That we got married because we chose each other. The circumstances don't matter as much as the choice. Elena was quiet for a moment. What if he asks if we love each other? Then we tell him yes, because we do. What if he asks if we would have gotten together if it wasn't for the corporate clause? Daniel thought about it, really thought. I don't know. Maybe not. We were in different worlds, different orbits, but we did get together and we fell in love and we built this. The how matters less than the what we have now. Do you ever regret it? How fast everything happened? Sometimes I wish we'd had more time to be just us before all the drama hit. More time to date, to figure each other out without the pressure. Daniel pulled her closer. But no. I don't regret any of it. The chaos brought us together. I'm not going to apologize for how we got here. Elena settled against him, her breathing evening out. I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. I know. You show it in other ways, making sure there's coffee ready when I wake up, helping Jamie with homework even though you hate math, learning to make grilled cheese because it's his favorite. I'm still terrible at grilled cheese. You're getting better. Last week's batch was almost edible. She swatted his arm, but she was smiling. I love that you don't let me get away with anything, that you call me on my bullshit, that you treat me like a person instead of a position. You are a person, an infuriating, brilliant, workaholic person who steals my sweatshirts and reads in bed until 1 in the morning. Guilty on all counts. They fell asleep on the couch, Scout wedged between them, the TV still playing forgotten action sequences. When Daniel woke at midnight, his neck cramped from the awkward position, he carried Elena upstairs, settled her in their bed, and lay beside her wondering how he'd gotten this lucky. The answer was he hadn't gotten lucky. He'd gotten desperate enough to say yes to an insane proposal, brave enough to stick it out when it got hard, and smart enough to recognize love when it showed up disguised as a business arrangement. Spring brought Jamie's 7th birthday and the realization that they needed to do something bigger than their usual small celebrations. Elena suggested a party. Real party with kids from school and cake and games. Daniel initially resisted, worried about the expense, until Elena reminded him they could actually afford it now. I keep forgetting we're not broke anymore, Daniel admitted while they planned. It's been a year, and you still look guilty every time you buy something that isn't on sale. Old habits. I spent so long counting every dollar that spending freely feels wrong. Elena took his hand across the kitchen table where they'd been making party lists. You're allowed to enjoy the stability, to not worry about making rent or whether you can afford Jamie's school supplies. That's not extravagant, that's just normal. Nothing about our life is normal. True. But we can pretend sometimes. The party was chaos in the best way. 20 kids running through their backyard, Scout overstimulated and ecstatic, parents making polite conversation while secretly judging the house. Daniel caught Elena looking overwhelmed at one point and pulled her aside. You okay? He asked. There are so many people in our house, touching our things. They're 7-year-olds. They're supposed to touch things and make noise. I know. Logically, I know. But I feel like I'm hosting a board meeting except everyone's sticky and screaming. Daniel laughed. Go hide in my office. I'll handle this. I can't abandon you. You're not abandoning me. You're taking a strategic break to recharge. I've got this. Elena squeezed his hand gratefully and disappeared inside. Daniel managed the chaos. Cake cutting, present opening, preventing small disasters. Jamie was delirious with happiness, covered in frosting, showing off Scout to anyone who would listen. Marcus pulled Daniel aside as things were winding down. You're good at this, the dad thing. I've had practice. No, I mean the whole thing, building a life, making a home. Marcus glanced toward the house where Elena had emerged, looking calmer. When I first got assigned to you guys, I thought it was weird. The sudden marriage, the corporate drama. I figured it was some kind of scam. It wasn't, isn't. We're real. I know that now. You can tell by how you look at each other, how you move around each other. That's not something you can fake. Daniel watched Elena crouch down to help a crying child who'd skinned her knee, gentle and competent despite her earlier overwhelm. No, it's not. She's lucky. You both are. The party finally ended, the house a disaster of torn wrapping paper and abandoned party favors. Jamie was crashed on the couch, Sugar exhausted, Scout asleep at his feet. Daniel and Elena surveyed the damage. This is a nightmare, Elena said without heat. This is what happiness looks like. Sticky and chaotic? Exactly. They cleaned up together, a comfortable silence between them. Daniel washed dishes while Elena gathered trash, their movements synchronized in the way of people who'd learned to work as a team. Thank you, Jamie said from the doorway, making them both turn. For the party, it was the best birthday ever. You're welcome, buddy, Daniel said. Jamie looked between them, something serious in his expression. Can I ask you something? Always. Are you guys going to stay married, like, forever? The question hung in the air. Elena set down the trash bag she'd been holding, moved to sit at the table. Daniel joined her. Come here, Elena said to Jamie. He climbed into her lap, still small enough to fit, though growing every day. Did I ask something bad? No, you asked something important. Elena looked at Daniel, then back at Jamie. The truth is, your dad and I got married kind of fast. There were reasons, complicated grown-up reasons, and at first it was scary because we didn't really know each other. But now you do? Now we do. And now we choose to stay married because we love each other and we love our family, which includes you. And Scout? And Scout, Daniel confirmed. We're not going anywhere, Jamie, any of us. Even if things get hard? Especially if things get hard. That's what families do. They stick together. Jamie seemed satisfied with this answer. He hugged Elena, then scrambled down to hug Daniel. Good, because I like our family. After Jamie went to bed, Elena found Daniel on the back porch again. Their spot. Where they'd first kissed, first admitted feelings, first started becoming something real. He's growing up, Elena said. Too fast. He's going to figure out the whole story eventually. The corporate clause, the rushed marriage, all of it. I know. But by then, hopefully he'll understand that how we started doesn't define what we became. Elena leaned against him. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't made that joke? If you hadn't said I should marry you? Sometimes, but it's like thinking about alternate timelines. Interesting but pointless. This is the life we have, the one we built together. I wouldn't change it, any of it, even the hard parts. Not even the part where my father went to prison? Daniel considered. That must have hurt. Still hurts, probably. It does. But I'm learning to accept that he made his choices. I tried to save him, tried to give him chances to do the right thing. He chose himself every time. Elena's voice was steady, but Daniel heard the old pain underneath. I can't carry guilt for his failures. I tried that for a while. It nearly broke me. What changed? Therapy, mostly. And you. You showed me that I could be successful and still have a life, that I didn't have to sacrifice everything for the company. You showed me I was worth more than I thought I was, that I could be someone's partner instead of just surviving alone. They sat in comfortable silence, the spring air warm around them. A year ago, they'd been strangers bound by desperation. Now they were partners, lovers, parents to a boy and a gangly dog. They'd survived fraud and trials and public scrutiny. They'd built something real out of something that started as pretend. I want to renew our vows, Elena said suddenly. Daniel turned to her. What? I want to have a real wedding, not a courthouse quickie because we needed to satisfy a corporate clause. A real ceremony where we choose each other in front of people who matter, where we say vows we actually write instead of legally required phrases. You want a wedding? I want to marry you again, for real this time. Is that crazy? Daniel thought about it, about standing in front of their friends and family, saying words that meant something, celebrating the choice they'd made to build this life together. It's not crazy. When? Our anniversary, 6 months from now. Small ceremony, just people we care about. What do you think? I think I'd marry you every day if you asked. Elena kissed him, deep and certain. Once more is probably enough. They planned the wedding together over the following months. Nothing elaborate. Elena had enough of spectacle in her professional life. Small ceremony in their backyard, close friends and colleagues, Jamie as the ring bearer, Scout probably causing chaos. The opposite of their first wedding in every way that mattered. Daniel wrote his vows on a Tuesday night while Elena worked late. He'd never been good with words, numbers were his language, but he tried. When he read them to her the night before the ceremony, sitting on their bed while she pretended not to cry, she said, "You're better with words than you think." I had good motivation. Read them again. I want to memorize them. He did, watching her face as the words landed. They weren't flowery or poetic. They were honest. About choosing each other, about building something from nothing, about love that grew in unexpected places. Elena's vows were sharper, more precise, but no less emotional. She talked about fear and trust, about learning to let someone in, about the difference between needing someone and choosing them. The ceremony itself was perfect in its imperfection. Jamie dropped the rings, and Scout had to retrieve them. Elena's voice cracked halfway through her vows. Daniel forgot his third line and had to improvise. Marcus caught the whole thing on video, including the moment when they kissed and Jamie yelled, "Finally!" Afterward, at the small reception in their living room, Margaret Torres pulled Daniel aside. You know, when Elena first announced she was married, I thought it was the worst decision she'd ever made. Desperate, reckless. Exactly the kind of thing that would undermine everything she'd built. And now? Now I think it was the best decision she ever made. You ground her. Make her human instead of just a CEO. Margaret smiled. And you're damn good at your job, which doesn't hurt. High praise coming from you. Don't let it go to your head, but do let it sink in. You belong here. You earned your place. Stop waiting for someone to figure out you're not supposed to be here. Daniel realized she was right. He'd spent so long feeling like an imposter at the company, in Elena's world, even in his own life sometimes. But he'd proven himself over and over, found the fraud, built his career, been a good father and partner. At some point, he needed to accept that he deserved the life he'd built. That night, after everyone had left and Jamie was asleep, and Scout was sprawled across the living room floor, Daniel and Elena slow danced in their kitchen to no music. Just them, swaying in the quiet house, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. Best decision I ever made, Elena murmured against his shoulder. The wedding? Asking you to marry me. Trusting you with the truth, letting you in. Best decision I ever made was saying yes. Even though it was insane? Especially because it was insane. Safe choices never changed anyone's life. Elena pulled back to look at him. What do you think 7-year-old Jamie will remember about all this? About the trial, and the media, and the chaos? I think he'll remember that we stuck together. That when things got hard, we didn't run. That we built something worth protecting. I hope so. I hope he remembers the good parts more than the scary parts. He will. Kids are resilient, and he's got us, both of us. That's more than a lot of kids have. They moved to the back porch, their spot, watching the stars come out over their yard. A year and a half ago, Daniel had sat on this porch and kissed his CEO, terrified and exhilarated. Now he sat here with his wife, comfortable and certain. Tell me something I don't know about you, Elena said. After all this time, you know everything. There has to be something, some secret you're holding back. Daniel thought. I used to want to be an astronaut when I was Jamie's age. I'd stay up late looking at the stars, planning which planets I'd visit first. What happened? Reality. Math degrees are more practical than astrophysics. Data analysis pays better than space exploration. He shrugged. But sometimes I still look up and wonder what it would have been like. It's not too late. You could still do something with astronomy. Hobby, side project, something. Maybe. What about you? Any childhood dreams you abandoned for practicality? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school. I loved working with kids, helping them understand things, watching them light up when concepts clicked. You'd be a great teacher. I chose business because my father expected it, because it was the family legacy, and I convinced myself I loved it, that I was good at it, so it must be the right path. She turned to him. I am good at it, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen differently. You still work with kids. You help Jamie with homework. You volunteer at his school events. It's not teaching, but it's something. It is something, Elena agreed. Maybe that's the lesson, that we don't have to abandon who we were to become who we are. We can hold both. The astronaut data analyst, the teacher CEO, the single dad who found a family, the woman who learned that letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself. They sat in the darkness, two people who'd taken impossible risks and somehow made them work. The corporate clause that brought them together was gone, invalidated when they'd renewed their vows. They didn't need it anymore. They had something stronger, choice. Every day they chose each other. That was worth more than any legal requirement. Do you know what I'm most proud of? Elena asked. What? That we survived. Not just the fraud, or the trial, or the media, but that we survived becoming real. A lot of relationships that start the way ours did fall apart when the crisis ends, when there's nothing left to fight against, no external pressure holding you together. We had something to fight for instead of just against. Jamie, our future, each other. Exactly. And we keep choosing that, even when it's hard, even when we fight or disagree or drive each other crazy. Daniel pulled her close. We're going to keep choosing it, tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, until choosing you is so automatic I don't remember what it was like to be alone. I don't remember anymore. Being alone. It feels like you've always been here. Same. Like my life before you was just the prologue. This is the actual story. They went inside eventually, checked on Jamie, who was sprawled sideways across his rocket bed with one arm flung over Scout. The dog lifted her head, thumped her tail once, then went back to sleep. Perfect contentment. In their bedroom, getting ready for sleep, Elena caught Daniel's reflection in the bathroom mirror. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not just content or getting by. Happy." "Me too. It's unfamiliar." "We'll get used to it." "Promise?" "I promise. We survived everything else. We can survive happiness." They fell asleep tangled together, the window open to let in the spring air, the house quiet around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, always did. Work pressures and parenting struggles and the small conflicts of two people learning to build a life together.